Of his own who knew his habits, could finish his sentences. It sounded cheesy as hell, but it was the kind of thing his mother had talked about when she was alive. His parents had been happy and in love for most of his childhood, up until he was 12. His dad had made a bad investment and had had to risk everything to save the farm. His mother had wanted to sell it, take the money, and live modestly, but his father was firm. The farm had been in his family for generations, and he wasn't going to sell. Ever. The night of their last big fight, his mother had gone to stay at a hotel. The roads had been slick, and the police figured she'd hit a patch of black ice. It was hours before another driver saw her car overturned, and by the time any rescue attempts were made, she was already gone. The doctor said she died on impact, but Justin had always thought they were just trying to make her husband and sons feel better. A few months after her death, Edward Willis had started visiting their ranch often, and for a while his dad had been in good spirits. Then one night he and Everett had heard them screaming at each other. Justin had overheard most of it. Edward had called Fred a stupid, drunk lowlife who'd ruined everything. Fred had screamed that Edward was an uppity prick with a stick up his ass. It wasn't until they'd started throwing punches that Everett had stepped between them, breaking up the fight, despite Fred's orders for his son to mind his own business. It had taken more than a tap on the chin to get their dad to stop struggling. After Edward had peeled out of their gravel driveway, Fred had continued to rage, and it had taken both of them to get their dad upstairs and calm him down. Though Justin had missed his mom, his dad had taken her death the hardest. Justin had tagged along with Everett for the next 2 years, picking his dad up from whatever bar he'd managed to close down. When Everett had announced he was joining the Marines after high school graduation, his dad had been accepting and proud. Justin had figured it was because the two had butted heads at every turn, but he'd known Fred had still worried. So, at barely 14, Justin had followed in his older brother's footsteps, riding his bike into town and driving his dad home when he was too bombed to function. He'd never gotten caught for driving without a license, but hell, he'd been driving their old truck on the farm since he was 12. Still, as soon as he turned 15, he was at the DMV taking his test. For the next 3 years, he'd skipped out on dates, hanging with his friends, and even prom to pick up his dad. But when Justin had announced his own intentions to enlist, his dad had exploded about being abandoned and had even tried to bargain with him. "If you want to go to college, I could probably swing it. You could take some ag and business courses here and—" "When are you going to realize I don't want this life?" For the first time in his 17 years, Justin had stood up and gotten mad, clenching his fists as he yelled, "I don't want to work this run-down piece of dirt until I lose everything and end up a bitter old drunk like—" His dad had taken a swing at him, but because he was already halfway through a bottle, he'd been unbalanced. Though shocked, Justin had avoided the right hook and could only watch as his dad fell over the coffee table and hit the floor. After a moment's hesitation, Justin had picked him up and helped him to his room to sleep it off. He hadn't mentioned leaving again until the week he was scheduled to report to recruit training. "What am I going to do without you, boy?" his dad had whispered. Stone cold sober, instead of being angry, his father had seemed disappointed and sad. But Justin was resolute. He wanted to be anything but a farmer, and if a college education and a trade could do that for him, it was worth it. After Justin had left, Jared started working for Fred, helping Silverton Farms become a profitable business again. But once Jared got his teaching license and left, the business manager he'd hired to help out had rubbed Fred wrong. Justin had been in the Marines 8 years, finishing up his 3rd tour when he'd gotten a letter from his dad begging him to come home and help out. After what had happened to his brother, he had been planning to get out anyway, but when the letter came, he knew it was the right thing to do. Thinking it was just going to be a few months, he'd agreed. But 4 years later, he now had a mechanic's license to work on tractors, a bachelor's degree in business, and a small 2-bedroom on the east side of the property. It hadn't taken him long to get wrapped up in the